Please remain standing for the reading of the Gospel. The Gospel reading is Matthew chapter 25, beginning with the 31st verse. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. Before him will be gathered all the nations, and he will separate them one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will place the sheep at his right hand, but the goats at the left. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, "Come, O blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? And when did we see you a stranger and welcome thee, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you?" And the king will answer them, "Truly I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these my brethren, you did it to me." Then he will say to those at his left hand, "Depart from me, you cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me, naked, and you did not clothe me, sick and in prison, and you did not visit me." Then they also will answer, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not minister to you?" Then he will answer them, "Truly I say to you, as you did it not to one of the least of these, you did it not to me." And they will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. This is the word of God for the people of God.
So I don't know about you, but I have found myself intrigued by this Philae space probe. You know, it left Earth 10 years ago. It's traveled over 300,000 miles, and now it has landed successfully on a comet. I mean, who knew that you could land on a comet? And what was fascinating during all of this was the final moments as the spacecraft approached the comet. Because it's so far from Earth, the people on ground control here could not give real-time commands if some correction were required. They had to just trust that the commands that they had given a long time ago would actually work and would actually be able to land successfully. They said that there was a 7-hour period of suspense when the people on Earth were powerless to do anything but to wait and see what would happen. Well, it landed successfully, and what it got me to thinking about is God and us. Everything makes me think about God and us. It's what I do for a living. But in this case, it's sort of interesting, is that God could give you directions in real time, right? God could follow you around somehow, like with a megaphone and say, "Do this now. Okay, now do this. Don't do that." God could do that, but that's sort of beneath God. It wouldn't be real dignified for us. So it's as if God gave us instructions a long time ago, and then God waits in suspense to see what we will do in real time. God waits to see what we will do in real time. The problem with this, though, is that in real time there actually is somebody running around with a megaphone, and it is our society. And our society is giving us all kinds of messages about what to do in real time. And sometimes, therefore, we forget what God told us to do way back when. And the things the society tells us to do, they're not all terrible. They're things like be nice, be hardworking, be diligent, achieve all that you can, earn all that you can, have as much fun and pleasure as you can. And then the other messages that we get in the megaphone as we run around in real time has to do with when you see somebody who's struggling. When we see somebody who's struggling, society tells us that it must be their fault, or it must be Obama's fault, or it must be Pat McCrory's fault. But it's very important that we assign blame and point fingers. What's very interesting is the directions that Jesus gave us a long time ago. This is so interesting. Jesus never said, be nice. Jesus never said, be diligent, achieve all you can, get ahead, earn money, maximize your pleasure. And Jesus most certainly never said, when you see someone who is struggling, point the finger and assign blame. No, Jesus never said that. Jesus told us something kind of simpler in a way, and I want to try to unpack that this morning. Jesus said, I want you to be grateful, and I want you to love me. I want you to be grateful, and I want you to love me. Now, Thanksgiving is coming this week. You knew this. And did you know that? It's this Thursday. Yes. Thanksgiving is coming, and I'm just one of those people. Thanksgiving has never made a lot of sense to me. Like, the way we express our gratitude to God is we overeat one day. I've just never quite gotten the logic of that. Christians should not have a day of Thanksgiving. For Christians, Thanksgiving should be a way of life. It should be the very breath that we breathe. I've told you recently about the psychiatrist Martin Seligman, who said that if you're dealing with any kind of depression or anxiety, if you want to get a little bit better, just write a bunch of thank you notes every day, and you'll get better. You may not get totally cured, but you will be better. It just is wired into our nature that as we express gratitude to other people, not just what you do to be polite, but actually thanking people for what they mean to you, for what they have done for you. As you do this, you just get healthier inside your soul. Whatever's miserable in you doesn't feel as miserable. It is good to give thanks. It's good to give thanks to God. But I want to think about the second thing, about what it means to love God. Early in the year 2015, that sounds way the heck in the future, doesn't it? The year 2015, that would be 1 month from now, roughly. In the early 2015, we're going to do a series here on the church on what Jesus said of, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And I'm real excited in my preparations for it. I think it's going to be really good and help us to grow closer to God and so on. But what's interesting as I've begun to prepare is occasionally there are certain Christian saints, certain Christian heroes who think about the love of God and the love of neighbor, and they find the exact intersection of those two, of what it means to love God and what it means to love the neighbor at the same time and in the same way. And they're usually people who are wonderful and very strange, like Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa was wonderful, and she was a little strange. And here's something that she said about the work of the missionaries of charity in terms of their work with the poor, with really the poorest of the poor. She said, we firmly believe that we are touching the body of Christ whenever we are helping and touching the poor. We cannot do this with a long face. It brings great joy. We pray while we work. We do our work for Jesus. We do our work to Jesus. This brings a tremendous closeness with him. It's as if Mother Teresa heard this passage that Jane just read about, as you have done it to one of the least of these, you have done it to me. And she decided she would actually try to do that in her life. You see, it would have been so much easier for us, people like us, it would have been so much easier for us if Jesus had said, for as you have treated the affluent, the good-looking, and the cool, you have done it unto me. Right? Like, we know what to do with affluent people. We kind of fawn over them, and we treat them with great interest. And the good-looking people, we know to keep an eye on them. And the cool people, we know how to stay near them. But Jesus didn't say, as you have treated the affluent, the good-looking, and the cool, you have done it unto me. No, Jesus says the people that are struggling, the people that are poor, the people that are sick, The people that are in prison, as you've treated them, that is how you have treated me. You see, Jesus is the friend of sinners. Jesus is the friend of the broken. It's actually more than that. Jesus actually, according to the Bible's logic, is the broken people. Jesus actually is the poor person. There's a great story that comes out of the 4th century. There's a guy that we now know as Saint Martin of Tours. He was a Roman soldier, and he kept reading in the Gospels that Jesus said, love your enemies. So he decided he was going to be a conscientious objector from the military. Everyone accused him of being a coward, so they threw him out of the army. He was walking home, but he still had his Roman army coat on. He was on the road, and he came to a poor beggar who was very hungry and was very cold indeed. So Martin gave him the food that he had on him, and he also gave him his Roman army coat. He and quite a few people in the city of Tours had a dream that night. And in the dream, Jesus is walking around in heaven wearing this new Roman army coat. And the angel said, Jesus, where did you get that Roman army coat? And Jesus said, my friend Martin gave it to me. Martin, who lives in Tours. As you have done it to one of the least of these, you have done it to me. All this business about giving food to the hungry and giving drink to those who are thirsty and welcoming those who are strangers and clothing those who are naked and visiting those who are sick. Jesus does not just say that these are good ideas. Jesus does not say that these are good resume patterns. Jesus does not say that these are things that you can do to help yourself feel better as you go through the walk of life. Jesus says your very salvation is tied up in whether you've done these things or not. And a lot of us have to plead that we've not done. I love that moment in Ann Tyler had a novel that not a lot of people read called Patchwork Planet. There's a character in that novel named Barnaby Gatelin, and he says what I have often said, which is, I hope God gives me credit for all the things I didn't do. Right, you have to think about that. Like, I might have done this and this and this, but I didn't do it. I hope God gives me credit for this. But in this story, Jesus talks about the things that we didn't do. We didn't feed the hungry. We didn't clothe the naked. We didn't welcome the stranger. Another interesting thing about this, I hadn't thought about it until this week, is that what Jesus seems to be asking of us in this story for us to enact in real time, he doesn't really ask us to do anything that's hard. He doesn't say, I was sick and you healed me. Like, yeah, that'd be hard to do, right? How many of us can actually heal someone? A couple of doctors in the room, you probably can heal someone. But Jesus doesn't say, I was sick and you healed me. Jesus just says, I was sick and you came to me. That sounds pretty easy. Sounds like something that anybody could do. In fact, this is probably why, I don't know this, I can't go back in time and ask Jesus. But Jesus, when he talks about those who do his will, he's talking about separating sheep from goats. And the question I would ask you today is, would you rather be a sheep or a goat? And if you've ever been around sheep and goats, your answer would be neither. Because sheep and goats, they're just not pleasant creatures to be around, and they both are really, really dumb. Goats probably are a little bit smarter than sheep, as it turns out. They have genetically 6 more chromosomes. Goats, this is interesting, if it starts pouring down rain, a goat will try to find shelter. A sheep just stands in the rain. Goats will actually climb up to try to find food, but sheep, just whatever's on the ground. They're not looking anywhere else. Goats can be kind of independent. So if a goat is doing something stupid, the next goat won't necessarily do it. But sheep, they'll walk right off a cliff after a fellow sheep. They're just so dumb and inept. I told you about this sheep that Lisa and I saw. We were on sabbatical last year. We were on this hike, And we were in this field. There were lots of sheep there, and we were all walking along this fence, and there were a lot of sheep and goats on that side of the fence, and this one sheep had gotten over here. And he just couldn't figure out how he got there or how to get back. And there was an opening in the fence right over here. But the sheep is here, and he speaks across the fence to the other sheep. He says, "Bah!" And one sheep looks back at him and says, "Bah!" And this one answers, "Bah!" And they're just talking back and forth. I don't know what they were saying. I think they were probably saying something like, "How'd you get over there?" The other one says, "I don't know. How do I get back?" The other one says, "I don't know." And I'm down there at the opening in the fence saying, "Dude, right here. That's the way back." And the sheep looks at me and says, "Bah!" They are dumb creatures. And Jesus says that those who do God's will, like, you can be as dumb as a sheep. You don't have to heal anybody. You don't have to have an advanced degree to do what Jesus asked you to do. You just have to be willing to follow the instructions. And it's all really simple, and it's all really doable, and it's all about how you treat God's children. And I thought about this, how do we do these things that Jesus asked us to do? And there are a lot of things that we could say. We have partner agencies that help us to do these things. We have something like, we did the Stop Hunger Now program, and I've got to applaud you, because so many of you have come and you've done something that a sheep could do. Actually, probably a sheep couldn't pack one of those meals, right? The sheep would probably eat it on the spot. But you just packed a meal and you fed a hungry person by doing that. It was just so simple. It just required that you showed up and did it, right? So we fed the hungry when we did this. How do we give drink to the thirsty? Our church has a water project in Liberia where right now they're dealing with Ebola. And because of that, some of the people that are trying to fight Ebola have clean water in Liberia because of our church. How do you welcome the stranger? Let me say this. You have a great opportunity every Sunday morning to welcome strangers. So as people say to me, "I love to come to church and see my friends." I'm glad you come to church and see your friends, but there are also a bunch of God's strangers around, and God's waiting to see is, will you welcome the stranger? We try to ask questions like, who are the strangers to the church? Who don't feel welcome in church? Who are the people, they just don't want to come to church because the church has a reputation for not liking certain kinds of people? How do we welcome those strangers who don't just feel welcome in the church? How do we clothe those who are naked? I knew a guy years ago. He was a single dad. He was raising his son. He did this amazing thing. He was trying to teach his son about how to be a Christian. So one of the things he said is when your coat gets old and worn out and you're too big for it, you need a new coat. You take your old worn out coat and you take it to the church coat drive, and then some poor person gets a coat, right? And then he thought about that and did a little better. So then he and his son would go out, and when he would buy a nice new coat for his son for the winter, he would buy a second nice new coat for a child that they didn't even know. It's like so obvious once you think of it. How do we clothe the naked? How do we visit the sick? Our church does great things for the sick. We have prayer shawls, we have casserole teams, we have prayer chains, we have care teams. We do good things for those who are sick. But as we mentioned in the first of the year, I still want to keep this challenge before us. In this church, if you have cancer, this church is extraordinary to you. You get casseroles, prayer chains, notes, visits, all kinds of support. But if you have a kind of mental sickness, let's say you're bipolar, or let's say you suffer severe depression, we don't quite know what to do, so we sort of avert our gaze. But Jesus says, I was sick and you not cured me, but I was sick and you visited me. Who are the sick we're being called to reach out to? Christmas is coming. Christmas puzzles me about as much as Thanksgiving. There's something I think coming called Black Friday, and I have to confess to you, I don't know what that is. And I don't think I want to know what that is. I started to ask Lisa yesterday, what is it? I just thought, no, I think it has something to do with shopping soon, right? And so you're probably getting ready to shop soon, and that also doesn't make any sense to me at all, right? It's that Jesus became flesh and came down to earth. So what do? We buy lots of nice, unnecessary objects for people who already own too many nice, unnecessary objects. You get the logic to that? That always eludes me. So what our church does is we give you an opportunity to shop. See, in the church, I thought about this. We have a Black Friday. We have a Black Friday, except we call it Good Friday. It was the day that the sky grew black and Jesus hung on the cross and gave his very life for us. So how do we love that Jesus who loved us on Black Friday? And there's a different kind of shopping, and our church gives you this opportunity. At Christmas, we have this alternative gift market. I looked through this thing this week. This is nothing but just an easy way to fulfill Matthew chapter 25. It's all right in there. I was sick and you visited me. You can buy a physical for a child at the Charlotte Community Health Clinic. Done. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. You can support Charlotte Refugee Support Services and help somebody learn English so they can get a job and fit into American society. I was hungry and you fed me. You can support friendship trays and get food to people that are hungry. I was naked and you clothed me. You can buy a school uniform for one of our reading buddies at Sedgefield Elementary School. Now, this just goes on and on. I mean, the support in here for women who are victims of sex trafficking through Lily Pad Haven. Like, what's your Christmas going to be about? How are you going to show your gratitude to God this Thanksgiving? I want to close with one last thing. I'm talking too long, and I've had a bad cold. My voice sounds horrible. I apologize. My voice might frighten young children today. It just can't be helped. I want to answer a question that I've been asked a bunch of times over the last couple of weeks, because we're raising money for next year, and I keep answering each question individually. I'm just going to do it in public and get it over with. People have asked, what percentage of our budget goes to missions? And the answer is, it depends on how you calculate it, but generally speaking, here's some numbers. Our annual budget is $5.5 million. $850,000 of that is dedicated to missions. And some of you may think, that's a very large number. And some of you are probably thinking, that's pathetic. And there's more money that goes out. The $500,000 that goes out through Jubilee Plus and the Wesley Trust and special asks that we give. But let me just be clear. I thought about this all week long. There is one and only one factor that decides what percentage of our money goes to missions. Did you know what it is? It's how much you give. For instance, let's say today we decided we want to double the percentage of our budget that goes to missions. We could do that. And you know what I'd have to do? I would have to fire Barbara Barden and Jimmy Jones. And we'd have to turn out the lights and not have heat in the building. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have fixed cost, and what enables that percentage to go up is your giving. And you actually did this last year, and I want to thank you and congratulate you, because last year you guys were so generous that at the end of the year we had a $142,000 surplus. Do you know what we did with that? It was not a pastor's bonus. We did not line the piano with platinum. No, we gave that money to people that were in need. So just because of your generosity last year, you increased that percentage. If you give us more money, we're not going to do dumb stuff for ourselves. We can do more of God's work in the world. That percentage is in your hands. This is a beautiful season that we are upon. A season of giving thanks. A season of celebrating God coming into our world. The question for us is, how are we going to respond to all of that in real time? Are we going to listen to that megaphone shouting in our ear? Or are we going to go back to those instructions that God gave us some time back? And God is waiting in suspense to see if we will, land the thing successfully and be God's people. Discover the joy, the light. This is a real privilege. It's our real chance to be the joyful people of God, who love our neighbors. Let's just do it in real time. Thanks be to God.